$2.3 million in Medicaid funds meant to prevent infant deaths. The indictment follows an investigation into the owner of the Here For You prenatal care business. This next story from Melissa Kay will bug you.
The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection says destructive Japanese beetles are becoming active in southern Wisconsin. Populations are expected to increase over the next 6 weeks and peak around mid-August. They recommend simple barrier netting as the best protection for your garden plants.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
When it comes to achieving successful jury verdicts and settlements, one law firm stands out above the rest. Gingras, Thompson & Wachs, a $6.2 million settlement for a woman permanently paralyzed as a result of medical malpractice. $4.9 million to members of a family injured due to the negligence of a truck driver and his employer. Call Gingras, Thompson & Wachs today, 855-954-1186.
All into it, Gingras, Thompson & Wachs. GTWLawyers.com.
Get ready to dominate the field like never before. Get to Soccer World in Brookfield. They have a great selection of shoes, apparel, and accessories to help kick your game into high gear. Soccer World's team of soccer experts have over 38 years of experience in the retail and soccer market. From cleats to shin guards, jerseys to coaching equipment, they'll help you stay ahead of the game. Plus, look to Soccer World for all your team business needs. Soccer World, 12615 West North Avenue in Brookfield, or online at soccerworldofbrookfield.net.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
You are never far away from your favorite radio station. We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media.
But we also proved that I'm not always nice.
But even when you're upset and even when you're ticked off, you still come from a place of compassion and love. Whereas I'm just old, bitter, and jaded.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
What kind of tax break would you need to feel it in your pocket? Like, what makes a dent for you when you think about how much you paid in taxes this year or the last year? And if you paid X amount less next year, what would that dollar amount have to be to really feel like it moved the needle? 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. And I am asking this because yesterday, Wisconsin Republicans passed their plan to cut income taxes by 15% on average. And there was the big kind of shoe drop that I think a lot of people expected. Their big thing was going to be cutting taxes. And so it came from the Joint Finance Committee. And it's a total of $3.5 billion through a plan that focuses its largest reductions on the state's wealthy and middle class filers. And there's a lot of numbers rolling around. And this is not final. This is still something that has to go to Governor Evers' desk. And he's made it pretty clear that he is in opposition to focusing income tax relief on top earners. And he would likely not sign a budget that would lower the state's top income tax rates. But who knows? Because the last time we did this, he did. And then he claimed it as his when he ran for re-election. But instead of, I think a lot of the conversation I've seen on Twitter so far is probably exactly what you thought. There's a lot of Republicans who are celebrating this. There's a lot of Democrats and left-leaning people who are saying more tax cuts for the rich. I don't want to get up in arms about it because it's not done. But I'm just really interested in how tax cuts change behavior. and like what it actually means for you and how much money would it have to be to feel it. Because certainly if you make a lot of money, there's a lot of money to be saved. And if you make an average, even still a lot of money, like, the average right now, the average comes out to about $500, a little bit more. So the average tax cut is $573 per year per taxpayer. And I guess my question is, does saving $573, is paying $573 less in taxes make a big enough difference for you to be celebrating this? 844-967-2789. We have Michael on the phone from Eagle River.
I think he's just from Eagle, Wisconsin,
Eagle,
in Waukesha
Wisconsin.
County.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well. I apologize for this, but I'm actually going to reject the premise of your question there, in so much that I don't know that unless you're on the really top end of like the 1% of top earners out there, you're not really going to necessarily feel this as much as you will. You feel a lot more when spending is reduced on a state level.
Okay.
Whether or not that's in our roads and bridges, in our education, that kind of stuff. That I feel like is something you feel a lot more than saving 15% on state income taxes, right? Because that's so much, your state income taxes are so much a smaller fraction of the overall tax you pay, whether or not that's Medicare and Social Security taxes or federal income taxes. They're so much smaller that you're not going to feel that as much as you are in the lack of spending that this might result in the long term. And I think that's what you're going to feel more, rather than the relief, quote unquote relief, that you might feel from this 15% tax return that's going to go, or tax cut that's going to go mostly to the wealthy and somewhat the middle class.
I would very much agree with you, Michael, but I think it's interesting because the way they're being sold is this is a tax cut for everyone, right? It's all four brackets. It is something, but it's like the marginal, and that's why I'm interested in how, if anyone feels like $500 would make a big difference in my household, and how that changes. Because I agree with you in that the trade-off of this is cuts to programs, cuts to spending on roads and a lot of things that we all use. And is it worth it? So thanks so much for the call. Next up, we got Emily from Appleton. What do you think, Emily? How much would this make a difference for you?
Hi. Well, I think as far I'm coming from a place of being on the upper end of things, we see a really significant amount back. And so as far as it making, I feel like in this moment we need to recognize what it means to the people that are at the lower end of the earning, I don't know, scale. And that would be I think we can acknowledge that would be huge. And your previous caller mentioned, the amount of spending in the state that we'd see decrease because of this tax plan would be the lasting hurt. But I do think that when my family would see tens of thousands of dollars back, we don't need that. This is for me a question of what is society, right? What do we need to pay into? What is that? Because the average of $15 at the lowest income earning level is ridiculous. That's not a tax break. that's a family meal at McDonald's, I am completely appalled that they're touting this as being any sort of boon for anybody that's at the lower earning level.
Well, not even lower earning level, because I'm looking at the chart that's been circulated as far as the average per, under 50K, 50 to 100K, 100K to 500. The average cut for the income group that's 100K to 500K, which is a lot of money in Wisconsin, is $1,231, which is for a lot of people, as long as if you take it to talking about childcare, is less than 1 month's tuition for childcare in most places in Wisconsin. And so that's why I'm curious as far as who thinks this is really a huge windfall for them, besides the people who are making over $1 million, who would see $30,000 back, or over $30 million, of which I think there's only 11 of those in Wisconsin, but they'll see over $600,000 back. And so I just am curious to hear from people on what does this mean for them. So as someone who's had a lot more than the average person to earn, it's really interesting to also hear you say this, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't make the trade.
no, I think it's ridiculous, and it's not. We don't need it. We don't need it. So.
Well, thanks so
It's
much.
wild.
Thank you for the call, Emily. But I would love to hear from you as far as what would you need to earn or to make to feel like this is a good deal, and instead of some of funding the UW system or childcare or putting putting money back towards roads or funding the Brewers, because that deal is still not done, and like all of the other priorities and things that have been floated as things that we need and that would help. Is it worth the trade-off? Like, how much money do you have to get back for that trade-off to be worth it? 844-967-2789. We have a text or a comment on the YouTube live stream. As always, you can watch us instead of just listen to us by joining us on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Twitter Live at As Goes Wisconsin. This comes from Andrew Longworth. An extra $20 per bi-weekly paycheck would not be noticed. $537 a year divided by 26 pay periods. That's kind of how I feel. And so I think for my family, we would fall into like the $1,200 range as a married couple. And does that mean I want to give up all of these, for that amount of money? Is there all these other things that I would say this is worth it to not fund these other programs for me? No, I'm also a bleeding heart. So I understand where I typically fall on my collectivist attitudes, but I would love to hear from you on where you would fall and how much it would really make a difference for you. 844-967-2789. And I should also acknowledge the elephant in the room. This is the first show ever, I think, since she joined, that Jane Matnair has the day off. And instead, on the board, we have Calvin. Calvin, do you have thoughts on this? What would move the needle for you as your taxes as a young man?
In reality, I don't know if I make quite enough money to really worry about it.
This doesn't affect you.
But yeah, I don't know. $20 out of every paycheck certainly wouldn't be noticeable to me. Like an extra $20 doesn't add up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you on the board today.
I'm excited to be here.
First time on As Goes Wisconsin.
Well, when you had the host training in Madison a few months ago, I did fill in on the board.
That is true.
When Dan filled in, I think it was Dan.
Was I not here at all?
Yes, you were not here at all.
Okay, so you've been here.
So this is my first time with you, though.
Yeah, let's have a fun Friday.
I'm looking forward to it.
Good. All right. Well, we are asking the question: how much money back in taxes would move the needle for you to feel like this was a win? 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. Because I think the way that this is getting, and actually later in the show today, CJ Szafier is back, CEO of Institute for Reforming Government, someone who is very much a supporter of cutting taxes. He actually falls on the side of wanting to cut income taxes altogether from the standpoint that it attracts workers. And I think one of the questions I'm excited to ask him about it, because we're going to talk about a lot of things. I think there's a lot to talk about with someone who is center right versus where I stand on a lot of this stuff. When we talk about solving our bigger problems as a state, where we fall, because I think the other question I have with this is how much less in taxes would you have to pay to motivate you to move? Because that's one of the arguments that they're saying is by cutting taxes, it makes us a more desirable place to live. But if we're giving the biggest tax cut to the highest earners, and in this case, the highest earners are at an individual rate, make $280,000. And I'm just curious of are those the kind of workers we're trying to, if that's the biggest tax break, is that also simultaneously who we're trying to motivate to move to Wisconsin? And how many of those people are actually out there? Because at least anecdotally for me, and I'll say this to CJ, all of my friends who have ever moved because of tax purposes certainly were very wealthy, but they also weren't employees. Like they were owners and they were private equity. They were, crypto guys. And so they moved to like Puerto Rico to chill and evade taxes altogether. All right. Would love to hear from you. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Larry, it's your mom. Did you know the Civic Media Network covers the whole state of Wisconsin? They can help your business get the word out, whether you want to reach a smidge of folks or just want the whole kit and caboodle. Call 608-819-8255. Okay then, bye.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Why a RICO charge, counselor? What's that mean to the layperson?
It was written for Organized Crime, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That's where RICO comes from. The notion that you've got an entity whose purpose is to try to perpetuate some crime. It's more than just a singular event. It is a composite of kind of a corporate conspiracy doing things toward this illegal end.
Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app. The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Gary from Sussex. Hey, Gary.
Whose birthday is it? Is it both you guys' birthday or is it Mike's?
It's my birthday today. Mike's was 2 days ago.
I'm going to sing a happy birthday, and I'm going to sing it the right way. Happy birthday to you, Mr. President of his radio station and his sidekick.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app.
Miss our conversations on air? Join the discussion on our social media channels. Find Civic Media on Facebook, Twitter.
'70s by Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 75 degrees.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry, and I am joined today. Instead of Jane is off today, so we got Calvin on the board. We're going to have some fun. We have after this segment, there's a lot of guests. We got Pat Kreitlow joining us in the next segment for the rest of the hour from Up North News Radio for our weekly Civic Media crossover, where we're going to go through his opinion of what the best, worst, and weirdest stories from the week were, and also play a little bit of the headline game. And then at 11 o'clock, we're going to be joined by CJ Szafier from Institute for Reforming Government to talk about, I think, a variety of, there's a lot to talk about as far as everything that's been going on with budget negotiations and bills that have been getting passed. And Madison has been very busy, and he approaches things from a center-right policy perspective. And so I think talking through some of the things that have been happening and how that affects Wisconsinites will be really interesting to get that from him. And then at 11:30, Matt Mueller will be here from On Milwaukee to give us our monthly pop culture update. But right now, I am asking you to let us know what moves the needle for you when we talk about tax cuts. What dollar amount would feel like a win, like would feel like a noticeable difference for you versus like kind of like, the idea of a tax cut. You're like, oh, like return taxes to the working people. They pay, it's their money, which I get. I get that argument as far as like why logically that makes sense. But as far as the different spending that could happen to programs that could impact you and make your life better versus a dollar amount that you would get back and get to choose to spend it how you want, how much money would that have to be to feel like that is the right trade-off? An even different question, how much money, how much less in taxes would you have to pay to motivate you to move to another state. Because part of the argument with this Republican tax bill is that by lowering the income tax rate, especially the highest income tax rate, it makes us a more appealing place to live and keeps people from moving, potentially gets people to move here. And I'm curious as far as when it's the top tax rate, which is either $280,000 as an individual or $374,000 as a married couple, are those the people, is that the people we're trying to get to move here? So 844-967-2789. Would love to hear from you on this topic as far as what moves the needle for you. Because, as far as the average tax cuts per group, if you make under $50,000, that affects about 900,000 Wisconsinites. And their average tax cut's going to be about $36 back. If you make between $50,000 and $100,000, that's another 770,000 Wisconsinites. They get $281 on average back. 100K to 500K, which feels like a big allotment, that's 654,000 Wisconsinites. They would see around $1,200 back. People who make $500 to $1 million, that's about 20,000 people in Wisconsin. They would get $6,000 back. People who make $1 million to $30 million, which I guess there are 79, there's almost 8,000 of them that live in Wisconsin. They would see about $30,000 back. And for the I got that wrong. It wasn't 11, it was 66. There's 66 people in Wisconsin that make over $30 million. And they would see $649,830 back from their income taxes, which I get. That's a lot of money to write in income taxes. But I also think it's interesting because I found this chart as far as the Wisconsin taxes as a share of family income. And so when you think of the taxes we all pay, there's certainly income taxes, which is a progressive tax rate. There's property taxes, and then there's sales and excise taxes. And still for the top percent, as far as a percentage of your family income, everyone in the what am I looking at this? So the top 1% pays about 7.7% of their family income to taxes versus the lowest 20% pay about 10. Now, granted, the lowest 20% isn't paying income taxes, but as far as a share of percentage of their family income, just on sales and excise taxes and property taxes, it ends up being about 10% of their income. And so I think it's just interesting as far as what we talk about what is fair. And is fair a percentage of your income, or is it the total you're contributing to the larger pot? And we probably, depending where you are on the ideological spectrum, have different definitions of what is fair. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about this, certainly with CJ, but I have a feeling maybe Pat will even bring this up when he's on next. We're going to go through the best, worst, and weirdest headlines in his opinion from this week. But would still love to hear from you if you want to shoot us a text or even call us about how much money do you have to make back in taxes in order to feel like this was a win, this was worth it, this moves the needle in my household budget. So shoot us a text, give us a call, 844-967-2789. When we come back after the break, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio, which you can hear every day, 6 to 8 a.m. across the Civic Media Network, is going to join us. So stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin, and we'll be right back.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News Brief. With chunks of the missing submersible lying on the ocean floor near the Titanic wreckage, the question is, what's next? CBS's Roxana Sabiri.
The Coast Guard said while it will continue to investigate the event, it's now starting to demobilize some of the search efforts.
Officials say the Titan imploded, all 5 on board presumed dead. A tornado touched down near Denver last night. An EF1 twister has been confirmed in Kinston, North Carolina, and extreme heat continues in Texas. The Weather Channel's Stacey Abrams.
Dallas will get back above 100 next week, and it's likely our temperatures will continue to stay above average through July 1st for a big chunk of the South.
A Grammy, Tony, and Pulitzer-winning lyricist has died.
Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match.
Sheldon Harnick wrote the words to songs in shows like Fiddler on the Roof and Fiorello. He was 99 years old.
I'm alone, so find me a
CBS News Brief. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
News is brought to you by Gingras Thompson & Walks, a statewide team of personal injury lawyers getting you the justice you deserve. Call 855-954-1186 for a free consultation.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Here's what you need to know in Southeast Wisconsin. 3 suspects, including a 15-year-old boy believed to be the sole shooter, have been arrested in connection with the shooting after Milwaukee's Juneteenth Festival Monday. The 17 and 19-year-olds arrested earlier this week face weapons charges. Traffic lights came down, a canine was brought in for a search, and a 15-year-old was arrested after a chase and crash last night in Racine County. Caledonia police say a black Dodge Charger was going over 100 miles an hour when it crashed at Douglas and 4 Mile Road. The 15-year-old suspect ran off after the high-speed impact. A GOP venue has been unveiled. Pete Schwaba has the story.
The home of the Bucks will be hosting a Fox in August. The first Republican presidential primary debate, August 23rd, will be at the Pfizer Forum. The debate will be moderated by Fox News hosts Brett Baer and Martha McCallum.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
The law firm of Gingras Thompson & Walks has a track record of making life-changing positive differences for their clients. $5.25 million to a woman who suffered brain injuries and her husband passed away when struck by a drunk driver. $1 million to 3 different individuals injured by drunk drivers. $1 million settlement to a man injured in a motorcycle accident. Call Gingras Thompson & Walks, 855-954-1186.
All into it, Gingras Thompson & Walks, GTWlawyers.com.
Hey, this is Lindsay Kindred at 540 WAUK The Shaw. At Civic Media, we love our local communities and want to share your stories. Submit your local event and we'll let our listeners know. Email me, Lindsay Kindred, at info@civicmedia.us. That's info@civicmedia.us.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Wisconsin's manner of funding local government is nearly singular in the country. That cheese stands alone, if you will. It hasn't been working in Milwaukee. It hasn't been working in Rhinelander. It hasn't been working in La Crosse, Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. I don't care what you pick. It ain't working.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flint Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry with Calvin on the board today. Jane has the day off, and we are very excited to welcome our friend, our colleague. You can hear him from 6 to 8 a.m. every morning across the Civic Media Network. Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio and the founding editor of Up North News. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin.
Hey, Kristen, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So nice to have you. I was on your show last Friday, so we're getting the crossover ball rolling.
That's right. We try to do that as often as we can on our show. Normally not until the very last few minutes. People seem to have a problem with the 6:06 in the morning segment, so we go with 7:50, and that seems to work some of the time.
I've also heard that some of your guests you pre-record because they're like, I'm not getting up with that early, Pat.
Oh yeah. There's especially on Wednesdays, I have a few different guests that show up, and they really help fill the show at that 6 a.m. hour on Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday. So God bless them for doing it. But it makes for a busy Wednesday and trying to sound timely, but somehow we managed to pull it off.
Managed to pull it off.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll catch up a little bit more on your show and everything because we got you for the full half hour. But I wanted one of the things that we do when we invite some of the other civic media hosts on here is to, do a little bit of a roundup for the week and get your opinion on some of the best, worst, and weirdest stories from this week. So I guess let's start with the good news. Pat Kreitlow, what do you think was what was the best story from this week, both either in Wisconsin or nationally?
I'm going to tell you, this was really hard this week. This week was, I've got so many candidates for worst.
Yeah.
And for best, well, look, best, if I were here a week ago, I would have said best in quotation marks that Governor Evers and Republicans in the legislature could come together on this kind of grand bargain. And as we've said on our show a lot, there's a lot there for people to not like, but the fact that they actually agreed on something is a win. But that was last week. For this week, honestly, by the time I got done looking around, to me, the best story of the week was seeing that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg might fight in a cage. And it's the best story of the week because one might not come out. Maybe both. Fingers crossed,
Do you think that's actually going to happen? Or do you think Elon Musk is just trolling Zuckerberg?
Oh, they're constantly trolling, but they're also, attention mongers. And if they can either get the attention or monetize it, of course they'll go through with it because we remember how ridiculous we thought it was when Danny Bonaducci, from the Partridge Family was challenging people to fight way back when. And now it's just standard operating procedure to be a celebrity or an executive celebrity.
Do you feel like the next level might be, as we know that they had a little bit of a cat fight on the House floor, if we can get a cage fight between MTG and Bobo?
Oh my goodness. I
bet they might do it. I imagine someday if they're not elected officials anymore and they need extra cash, I honestly think both of them would do it for enough money.
I would definitely pay to see them in the cage, provided that we then dropped the cage at a certain point in the North Atlantic. Then, a little morbid, I know, but you went there. That's the conditions under which I care to see, those two do anything.
Would you pay to watch Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg? Like, would you pay the pay-per-view? I don't even know if pay-per-view is still a thing, but you would not. You just read about it the next day.
Absolutely. That's as much as Elon Musk has ruined Twitter. It's still running across my screen as kind of the old, AP news ticker. So I would just follow the play-by-play that way from other folks.
Whoever's live tweeting it. All right. Well, that is a dismal best of the week.
It's so dismal.
But we'll take it. So what did you choose then as your worst story of the week?
The worst story is the story that we've actually predicted here since the very beginning of Up North News Radio. And as I was introducing myself to the audience as a former legislator and a former journalist, in Eau Claire, and saying, I know these people. And at the time, the surplus was projected to be about $3 billion. It grew to 4 or 5 and so forth. And I said, what Republicans are positioning themselves to do isn't to invest the surplus. This is a heist. And yesterday they made it official that they want to clean out the vault and take much of that surplus and not put it into things that benefit children or infrastructure, families, businesses, anything. They want to do just what you were talking about earlier and give it away primarily to the super wealthy, still thinking that after all these decades, anybody but the wealthy believes in trickle-down economics anymore.
Have you heard my joke? It's not, I actually stole this joke, but have you heard this joke as far as let kids let kids believe in Santa Claus? There's grown men out there who still believe in trickle-down economics.
Absolutely, they do. And when you were going through the numbers of how much people would save, it reminds me of something, a line I use all the time, because somebody will say, "Well, I want that $1,200," and I'm guessing I'd get about $1,200 back, from this. And people say, "Well, yeah, you should get it because you can spend your money better than the government." And my response is always, "No, I didn't fill any potholes today. You didn't fill any potholes today. I want somebody to fill the potholes. I want somebody to teach my kids. I want somebody to make sure my drinking water is clean. Take that $1,200 and put it to work rather than putting it back into the pockets of people who tend to write them big checks."
Well, and if you looked at, because sometimes I follow a lot of policy wonk people, big shock, and some of the numbers as far as the discrepancies of, one of the things that keeps getting thrown out there is how much this will help small businesses and how much of the small businesses are in the top bracket. But I was reading some numbers and some threads that's just not true. Have you looked into these numbers at all as far as like when you can download the data from Wisconsin tax filers as far as business or professional net income? Only about 7% filed with $200,000 or more under business and professional income. And so where are they getting this number as far as saying most of the people in the benefits of that top bracket are small business owners?
It's projection, and it's all meant, any of these numbers are meant to divert attention away from the real issue, is that a lot of these small businesses, again, it's not about the money. They can't find good workers, so they want the minimum wage raised. They want paid family leave because they can't do that on their own. They have competition. But if everybody on Main Street, which is why the Main Street Alliance has been so good at this is a whole bunch of small business people saying, "Hey, you, the government, give us a level playing field so that we can compete. Don't make us race to the bottom in terms of wages and, well, we can't give you any time off or anything like that." Those are the things small business people want. They want high-speed internet, and they see that Republicans in the legislature last week took the state investment in broadband to $0, because they say, well, federal money will cover it. That's no reason not to continue the state investments that get higher speed internet to these small businesses and farmers that need it.
And so where do you think, if you were a betting man, or are you in the prediction business, or did you get out of that in 2016?
We got out of that, 2016. But we all lie and we make them anyway.
And so, because there's also the other part of this, which is they voted yesterday to cut the $32 million from the UW system for DEI.
For having the gall to stand up against racism. Good job, GOP.
But it's not even just racism. I think that's the thing that people, the misnomer around DEI is the same confusion and lack of shared definition that we had around CRT, which is diverse. The DEI programs are veterans, are people who are disabled, are a lot of people beyond just race and ethnicity and gender identity.
But they don't know that. They don't know, and they don't care, because DEI is just CRT, and CRT is just welfare queens, and welfare queens was just Southern strategy, and Southern strategy was just states' rights. It's all the same. It's a group that the reasons are dark, and I don't even like thinking about them, but they're still there.
They're still there. So I guess my question is, do you think the entire budget gets vetoed, or do you think there's line item things that Evers goes through and does?
That's always one of the toughest predictions to make in Wisconsin, simply because the line item veto here is so unique, and it's been changed a few times, but it is still amazingly complex to try to figure out all the different ways a governor can, red pen a budget in one way or another. So my short answer is, if he can find a way to do it through line item vetoes, he'll sign it. If he goes through it all and says this thing is not salvageable, I'd say there's a 10% chance that he vetoes it at best. I think he's one of those folks that like this great big deal that they made 2 weeks ago. He's a practical person at heart, and takes the half a loaf and lives to fight another day.
Because ultimately, the different options are if he vetoes it, this basically gets booted till October, right?
Well,
and we just
or
extend the budget that we're working with now.
or beyond, because and that's a win for Republicans. They don't see any downside in delaying a budget. And I sat through one of these in 2007. To them, it's just, well, we just continue. We don't have to increase anything by a single dollar. We just continue on as we are. So there's no real pressure on them. The only pressure Republicans feel is from their own constituencies. And look at all of the moms and dads and providers and small businesses putting pressure on them to amend the budget bill next week and put something back into child care counts. It's that kind of personal pressure that's the only thing that's going to move them, not whether the governor will sign this or not.
And does it though?
Does it move?
There's just so many popular things that we've seen no movement on. And so does that pressure actually work, or is this just a group of people who are so beholden to the party and donors and they're protected that it doesn't make a difference? And I hate saying that because it's like I'm in the business of trying to motivate people to do stuff and be engaged. But
no, I have seen things go back into the budget on the floor. Never, of course, to the extent that you would find acceptable, but where they say, "Oh, on second thought," and they'll put. Now, again, what did the governor put in? $340 million for childcare counts. Right? And the Republican answer last week was a $15 million revolving loan fund. I could absolutely see a floor amendment next week that says, well, we're going to stick to our guns on the revolving loan fund and we'll just make it $30 million. Well, that still does almost no good for providers, but budget amendments do happen. It's just that, no matter how much pressure you get, there's much more pressure from leadership to conform with what's put in front of you the first time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, then with the couple minutes we have left before our next break, what is the weirdest story from the week, Pat Kreitlow?
Oh, we had a couple of real doozies here. Do I have this one? Oh yeah, here's I actually have to choose between two. My second place one is the one with the Aaron Rodgers quote, where he says, words are so interesting. They have such power in their spells. There's a reason it's called spelling, because the way the letters are put together have such power. What?
I read that yesterday. Where was that? Who was he talking to?
He was speaking at a conference in Colorado, arguing for the legalization of psychedelics. Of course. So there was the one, and then there's the other that somebody said this particular headline, you could have infinite monkeys with infinite typewriters and they would never be able to come up or recreate the headline that accompanied the stepson of the billionaire who was lost at sea. And that headline was, California man whose billionaire stepfather is on missing sub asks an OnlyFans model to sit on him for 30 minutes after pleading for prayers as he triggers war of words with Cardi B over a Blink-182 concert. You're never going to see a headline like that again. That
story. I mentioned that yesterday, and Jade was like, so I was like, yeah, this guy is clearly.
Well, he should be at the conference with Aaron Rodgers. That's exactly where he should be.
All right. Well, that is our Pat Kreitlow's best, worst, and weirdest of this week. When we come back, he will still be here. And we'll have a little bit of a quiz. Jane's not here to play again. So it's you versus yourself, Pat, on some headline news from this week. We'll see how you do. And we'll learn a little bit more about Up North news and also a pending Pat Kreitlow show that's coming up.
That's the rumor.
All right. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
The summer heat can really get to you. Hot, sticky, you feel like you're melting. But Wauwatosa, coming in July, it'll be easy to cool off at Joy Ice Cream Social. This family-run, family-friendly business is more than just ice cream. It's a cool community hangout spot for friends and family. Let's talk about the ice cream. 16 delicious rotating flavors direct from the chocolate shop in Madison. The perfect way to stay sweet and cool this summer. Opening in July. Joy Ice Cream Social. Scoop, snack, shop. 8334 West North Avenue. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Why a RICO charge count?
Yeah, there's something wrong with that spot. I gotta tell someone about it.
Okay.
Forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon with highs around 86. Winds out of the northeast, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Mainly clear tonight, lows level off around 60. Mainly clear skies and quiet again tomorrow, highs around 89. 77 Sunday with a chance for scattered thunderstorms. 73 Monday, storms continue. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 77 degrees.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. Jane Metnair has the day off. We have Kelvin on the board and are joined by Pat Kreitlow of Up North News Radio, which you can hear across the Civic Media Network. But you have to wake up at 6 a.m. to hear it.
No. We can get it
You're
as
also
a podcast. You want the whole app and website commercial to go along with it?
Do it.
Yes.
Let's hear how you pitch it, and I can take pointers.
Yes, some pointers. You just go to civicmedia.us, and every hour of what we do is turned into a podcast episode. You can subscribe there or all the usual places, Apple, Spotify, or just listen live on the website or on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or the Up North News YouTube page. We're everywhere. Everywhere. Worldwide. And I have to say, one of the joys about getting to be on your show here is noticing the different styles. You are, not relaxed, you're preggers, but I mean, you just kind of sit back, but you talk, your arms are up here. And who's the old former TV anchor who's just sitting here ramrod straight, and trying to have good diction, and then suddenly notices that behind him is a stack of blank VHS tapes that I found in my basement. And I had to ask on air today, does anybody use or need a bunch of blank VHS tapes? Because I just stumbled upon these in the basement.
I apparently have some. It is funny. I've noticed whenever there's pictures of me, like if I sit on a panel at like any kind of event, I have terrible posture. I looked very relaxed usually, and it's like kind of slunk down, like legs crossed, and I do not the erect position of tall posture. I clearly was not on enough TV. How long were you an anchor for?
Just about 10 years on Channel 13 in Eau Claire, and then I had my first midlife crisis and went into politics and served in the legislature, and then after getting bounced from there and losing a race for Congress, I had my second midlife crisis and lived in the Caribbean for 3 years, and then came back. So like you, but on an island, not a coast.
Although the Cayman Islands seem pretty sweet.
Living in the Cayman Islands.
Was it hard to leave the Cayman Islands?
Yes, it was
Okay.
it was for me because I had a really good gig at a TV station down there, and my wife is an OBGYN, and her gig started off really well, but by the end of her 3-year contract, it was getting to be less fun for her, and we were starting to have more grandkids, and so we decided to come back to Chippewa Falls, and no regrets in going down, but no regrets in coming back either.
Absolutely.
What they
I
don't
totally.
tell you is it's heavenly. It's heaven there from Christmas to Easter. They don't tell you about how from Easter to Christmas, you basically feel like you're living on top of an exhaust vent from hell because of the heat and the humidity. It's just always so humid.
It's so humid.
And seriously, can I tell you my Wi-Fi password when we moved back
Sure.
was dry underwear, because we were so thankful to finally have it again, because you walk out your door and it's already 100% humidity and 85 degrees, and you sit in your car seat and all the sweat that has been running down your back catches up with you when you sit in the car and you go, not again. And that's your puddle for the rest of the day. And once Sherry mentioned it too, I was like, okay, so it's not just me. It's everybody. You really appreciate seasons and dry underwear when you come back to the Midwest.
Well, that you should put that on a poster as far as trying to recruit people from the hotter climates to move here. It's like, you want dry underwear? Move to Wisconsin.
Perfect. We'll give that a go.
We'll give it a go. We'll see if we can put that on a billboard, how much traction we get. All right. Well, this is the time of the week where we typically have a little bit of a headline quiz to see what headlines you caught wind of. Okay. And so I got 5 questions for you, all multiple choice, and we'll see how you do. All right. So the first one is, which country's immigration ramp up has led to the fastest population growth rate among high-income economies? A, Saudi Arabia, B, New Zealand, C, Canada, D, Japan.
That's a good question. And simply because I've been to and I'm absolutely in love with New Zealand, I'm going to guess there.
I didn't. Actually, no, it's Canada.
Oh, okay.
So
that would have been my realistic guess, but I wanted it to be New Zealand because I want to go back.
We talked about that earlier this week. They basically have like loosened immigration a ton, and they've been able to recruit. Like they hit 40 million people this year, which is still a lot less than the U.S. But as far as it's whatever they're doing is certainly working. All right, next question. 8. Fill in the blank. A blank company has placed ads in a video game to recruit in real life employees. A, fracking, B, cannabis, C, nursing, D, trucking.
Cannabis sounds like it's too easy, so I'm going to say nursing.
It's actually trucking. They've put trucking. A trucking company has placed ads into a trucking video game because there is such a thing. I've also learned
that's
recently
not autocorrect, is it? It's an actual trucking video game?
It's actually trucking. It's not but it is I also heard there's video games where you like power wash the side of a building. Like there's a video game for everything. As far as I am not a big gamer, but apparently this is not the first time that they have companies have tried to appeal to gamers to recruit them to come work with them by placing ads in the games that they're playing.
I gotta think it would work.
I don't know.
I don't know the cost. I don't know about the
be
return.
Like, let's go drive a truck.
Well, I mean, if you accept that not all gamers, are living in their mother's basements and don't want a job. Yes. I mean, if it's not N equals 0, there's got to be somebody.
That's true. All right, we got to power through these. We only got a couple minutes left. Right. Number 3, the USDA approved what food product for sale in the U.S. this week? A, Four Loko, B, lab-grown chicken, C, pink sauce, D, magic mushroom burgers.
I'm going to go with B.
Lab-grown chicken. Ding, ding, ding. Got that one right. All right. And then certain subreddits are only allowing to protest Reddit's plan to charge popular third-party apps money. Certain subreddits are only allowing posts showing A, Karl Lagerfeld's cat, B, John Oliver, C, Kendall Jenner, D, Rick Astley.
I'm going to go with A, the cat.
It's actually John Oliver.
No way.
That's all. So there's certain subreddits now. So instead of being dark, there are certain subreddits that are all just pictures of John Oliver, and he has blessed the attention. And
that's beautiful.
We only have a couple minutes left, or a couple seconds left, so I want to make sure that we plug the show one more time. Pat Kreitlow, you can hear him Up North News Radio from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. across the Civic Media Network, Monday through Friday. And when can people look forward to the Pat Kreitlow show?
That is TBD, based on getting the studio in Chippewa Falls at WCFW up and running. And once it is, there will be a local Chippewa Valley show from 8 to 9 in the morning.
That is very exciting. Are you ready for 3 hours of radio? I just stepped back from 3 hours of radio, and I'm pretty happy about it. Are you ready to get back to it?
Yeah, because the two I'll always continue doing as a statewide show, but the Chippewa Valley hasn't had a good 1 hour call-in show for a few years here, so it'll be nice to bring that back.
Perfect. All right. Well, so fun to talk to you as always, Pat Kreitlow.
too.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
You too.
All right. When we come back, CJ Szafier will be here, but stick around for the top of the hour news. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. An immigration victory for the Biden administration in a battle with Republican states that made it to the Supreme Court. Legal analyst Thane Rosenbaum.
The states wanted the government to do its job and deport all immigrants with criminal records who are undocumented and deportable. Immigration authorities responded by saying they don't have the resources to detain and deport everyone, and so they focus instead on present dangers. The Supreme Court essentially said that this is an executive branch decision and not for the courts to make.
The court also upheld the federal law that's used to prosecute people who encourage illegal immigration. A year ago, the justices overturned the Roe versus Wade abortion decision. Today, abortion rights advocates are speaking out.
We've heard from women who've been turned away from hospitals and told to wait in the parking lot, literally until they were on the brink of death.
Colorado Democrat Diana DeGette. In Wyoming, a judge has blocked the state move to ban abortion pills. In about an hour, they open the new temporary fix to that collapsed section of Interstate 95 in Philadelphia. KYW Radio's Tim Jimenez.
Crews worked
Unrelentlessly positive.
Innovative.
Innovative?
Whatever.
It indicates.
Indicative?
Hey, can we focus?
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin, the 11 o'clock hour on this beautiful first Summerfest Friday. I am your host, Kristen Bry. Our producer, Jane Matnera, is off for today. We got Kelvin on the board, and I am very excited for our next guest who comes about once a month to have ideological conversations on things that we don't always see eye to eye on. But I think what I appreciate about our friendship is that I think we both genuinely want to solve problems and come at these things with not the power political struggle, but actually like, how do we make things better? CJ Szafier, CEO of Institute for Reforming Government. Welcome back. How you doing?
Happy Friday.
Happy
Amazing. Look at it. It's gorgeous out.
You're in
It's
shorts.
summer. We're finally here. Well, the nice thing about working at home on Fridays is you get to wear shorts.
As I know, it's great. I
Right.
just live in spandex now, so I should not be telling anyone about their fashion decisions because I'm just peak comfort all the
And
time.
we got like 2 months of this, right? I'm going to milk it. I'm going to milk every day, every hour for what it's worth.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't know if you caught it at all on your drive in since you're here in person, but I spent the first segment of the show today talking about the Republicans' tax bill that came out yesterday. That is it's $3.5 billion. And it's a tax break for every single bracket, with the biggest being for the people who make the most. And my question was trying to just gauge people's behavior of like how much money moves the needle. Because you and I have talked about this before, as far as like by lowering taxes, how much of a difference does it make to people's incomes and their household budgets to really feel like it moves the needle for them? And so as far as thinking about it that way, the amount of people, how much money per household this affects, like how do you interpret what was introduced yesterday, or passed yesterday, I should say? We'll see if it makes it all the way to the end, but passed.
Well, look, I think first off, we start off with let's start out with what impacts people. So first off, you start with like, we have a $7 billion surplus, as you've mentioned, and that means the state government spent more than it's taken in, or it's taken in more. Yeah. And we need to kind of refund that back to the taxpayers. And to be honest, there is a bipartisan consensus in that. I mean, polling across the state shows that people think that income taxes are too high. Governor Evers did introduce a middle class tax cut earlier in the year in February. Our issues, it was also kind of coupled with somewhat tax increases on manufacturers. I also argue his middle class tax cut wasn't big enough. I said that at the time. I thought he could have gone bigger. So I think you kind of start out with that. Everyone kind of wants to figure out, how do we return this money back to the people, back to small businesses, back to middle class families, and then kind of how do we move the needle, not just for families, but also for the state, for the economy. So what the Republicans did, they put out a plan, collapsed 4 brackets into 3. We'll try not to boggle down listeners with too many numbers. Every single rate has a cut. Every single person is getting some sort of cut. That was not the case in Governor Evers' proposal. And there's a cut in the top rate. We can talk about that before everyone freaks out on Twitter. I was ratioed badly, and a lot of people were coming. I'm always ratioed whenever I talk about taxes, because the great bastion of civil discourse of Twitter.
It's only gotten better. I heard.
It's only gotten better. But there's been a cut in the top rate from 7.6 to about 6.5%. I think that's incredibly significant. And the average taxpayer saves about $570. And it's going to vary. There's going to be more analysis that's going to come out next week. There's going to be economists with the University of Wisconsin. There's going to be the nonpartisan folks at the Fiscal Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, we have those numbers, less than
What
24
does
hours
this mean
since
for
it's
each
been.
person?
Yeah, but it does mean it's some sort of cut. And for a lot of people, especially for those making between $13,000 to $300,000 a year, they're getting about anywhere like around like a 17% cut. And I think depending on how much you make, right, it's going to be some money. And the more money you make, how percentages work, the more money you make, you'll get a potentially a bigger cut in absolute dollars. And that shouldn't shock anybody. I think the top rate cut is a big deal for the state of Wisconsin. There's been economists that have done this, and you can't really think this is something that is hard. I think for some on the left, some Democratic lawmakers, Senator Evan Goyke. You have to appreciate that in order to really drive the economy, you have to go after that top rate, because we have a very high top rate. We have the 11th highest in the country.
No, I want you to finish, but I was going to have a follow-up question. Like, who are those people? So we're talking about $280,000 a year. Are we talking about employers, employees? Because I think of that. I look at that as an individual amount of money. That's a large number. And so it's like, is the argument here we're attracting people who are in that tax rate to come be employed here, or to start businesses here, or not leave? Or like, who is that group of people, and what is the argument as far as that is the people that we want, when that feels antithetical to when we talk about labor shortage, and that's like service industry workers. That is not people who are making $280,000 a year. So like, can you square that for me?
So how we would argue it is that top area, right? So you're tackling, there's a wide group of people. Yes, there's millionaires and billionaires in there. Absolutely, right?
Not a lot.
You can just
is
look at
this number correct, that there's 66 people in Wisconsin who make over $30 million? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm not one of them.
I'm also not one of them.
So I wouldn't know. But look, it is small businesses, and this is something that I think everyone in Wisconsin has to appreciate. 9 of every 10 small businesses in the state pay that top rate.
Is that true though? Because I saw a different number that said at least for the professional and business income, that it was of the people who filed worth over $200,000, it was 7%. So are these two different numbers?
I'm not aware of that. We've been pulling that, and that's kind of a commonly echoed talking point primarily using through IRS data. But I think it's also kind of where they are categorized and where they're kind of like filing. But keep in mind, like, we're not talking about corporations, right? But in any event, wherever you are, you have small businesses that are not paying they're not corporations.
Mm-hmm.
They're filing under, primarily just paying under the individual income tax scheme, where they all get kind of sucked into it. That's small businesses, that's barbershops, that's startups, that's restaurants, maybe radio stations. I don't know.
Maybe not yet.
and you would want them to, whenever we give back money, that's, potentially more money that, a barbershop or a coffee shop could pay for more employees or higher wages. We're talking about a lot of job creators too. And we're also talking about something that I think a lot of us have been kind of really trying to emphasize, which is, we think that people move around the country because of that top rate, because of tax rates. And we want to keep them in the state of Wisconsin. We don't want them to leave. And this is something that I think, I'm not going to sit here and say that 7.6 to 6.5 is going to be an ultimate game changer. We think that number's got to get ultimately to 0 or pretty darn close to it. But it does make us more competitive to other states across the country.
So basically the argument is this is a target to keep and retain people who make over $200,000.
I think it is not the silver bullet solution, but it is a main part of this solution.
And the argument for that is because they are job creators and just high income. Because I mean,
yeah,
if you cut their taxes, it's not like their income is creating more revenue if we're cutting it, right? So like, what is the genuine argument?
Unless they leave.
Unless they leave. But like, is the argument of like that is the high ticket citizen for Wisconsin? Is it simply because of that, like the small business aspect of it, or like what is the premium on making it more appealing to that demographic specifically to live here?
It's a small business aspect. It's the aspect of it's people who are investing in communities, investing into nonprofits, people that are investing into civil society organizations. I mean, there's just a huge ripple effect. Just think of your small town, right? You don't want some of those main people who are investing into those communities to leave. And you look all across Wisconsin. I mean, there are some real philanthropists. There are some real businesses that have such a strong component to that. But it's also, you're also talking about employees. I mean, you want to keep people in Wisconsin, and lower tax rates are going to get us closer to that than not. And that's why I think the Republicans went pretty aggressive on that top rate, but not so aggressive where it's something that I think the governor is going to have to give this a serious consideration to sign it.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, look, and also like these are not all Republicans getting these tax breaks. Like,
oh no,
I mean, just look at the governors. Look at the Milwaukee suburbs. College educated. His voting block in Wauwatosa, in Brookfield, in Elm Grove, in Mequon, all these voters that are kind of gravitating who voted for him. These are the people that are getting strong tax breaks under what we're walking through. I think he's going to have to give it hard consideration, because watering it down dramatically, I think it's also going to be shown that it has a dramatic less of an economic impact on the state. And ultimately, he can't rewrite, unless if he wants to kind of push this all the way into the fall.
Yeah,
he can't rewrite the plan. This is what the legislature is sending it to him, so he can water it down by a partial veto, or he can sign it, or he can veto it. But again, that's going to push it into the fall, which I just don't think either side wants.
All right. Well, CJ Szafier, so happy you're here. We're going to another segment with you after we take a break. If you have any calls or questions, feel free to text or call that in 844-967-2789. This is As Goes Wisconsin, and we'll be right back. Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. Good song choice, Kelvin.
The numbers do add up.
Follow the money. Welcome back. Our guest for this half hour is CJ Szafier, CEO of the Institute for Reforming Government. And we spent the last segment talking about the Republicans' bill that they passed yesterday when it comes to tax cuts. But I feel like there's so much, since we haven't talked in a month or so, a lot is happening. I feel like all my journalist friends who work at the Capitol are very tired because there's been a lot to keep up with. But as far as, in addition to, on top of, separate from, however you want to frame it, from the tax stuff, you know, the last time you were here, we talked about the major survey IRG did as far as going all over the state, talking to all sorts of people, and coming out with this report on, like, what do Wisconsinites want? And so as far as the debates that have been happening, things that have or have not made it into the Joint Finance Committee's discussion of what they want to fund, what they don't, how does that square with what you guys found in that survey as far as what people really want and care about and what we're choosing to prioritize by funding it?
Well, that's a fascinating question, right? And it's also an appreciation that about $90 billion of taxpayer money is going to be spent, I think, over the next 2 years. And this is going to be signed off. And, you know, I think the budget will be signed by 4th of July because everyone's got the same incentive. They want a summer vacation. That's a bipartisan agreement. No one wants to work in the summer.
Everyone wants to wear shorts again.
Everyone wants to wear shorts and be home over the summer, which I think that's going to motivate people to get a governor and the legislature to get an agreement done. But it's also an appreciation that, like, there's just some problems that aren't going to be fixed overnight. Even if there was agreement on how to solve them, we have some major issues that we discussed about a month ago. We've been on the road talking to different communities. Look, for example, one of the big ones is childcare. And there's a lack of access to childcare in certain parts, affordability. We heard this with community leaders. We also did a poll by State Policy Network that showed that about 75% of voters said cost of childcare is a major issue for them. So Evers has done a bunch of childcare things in his budget. The legislature kind of responded. We can, there's all these numbers, but at the end of the day, more money, will be going to the state's child care subsidy program.
The loan, the $15 million
Yeah, but that's
loan.
primarily low-income families, and not saying that that's good or bad or indifferent at the moment, but like that's actually not tackling the 75% of Wisconsinites that think that childcare is a issue that is tackling people almost irrespective of income levels. And
I mean, you have a small. I'm assuming your youngest is still in daycare.
It's expensive.
You know what it is, yeah.
And we've been very fortunate. We got in with a provider really early, but a lot of people. Everyone knows someone who has a child care problem.
To read the comment section, and that's all anecdotal. It's not actual, but it's like reading the comment section of the videos I've made on childcare and people's real stories of having to quit or having to work different shifts and never seeing their partner, or like all of the different, like, it's heartbreaking, right? Of how much this is, and like what kind of draconian like place do we live in where the only response is, well, if you can't afford it, don't have kids. And it's like, we want people to want to have the size of family that they want to have, right? And that they're not making these choices of, I'm going to have one, we're going to have fewer kids because this is too expensive. This is not sustainable. And so, like, for you guys, like, how do we tackle this from your guys' point of view? Your guys being IRG.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I have all the answers. Truly, because I think some of these things are very complicated. There is some I would think red tape, especially with that. There's all these ratios that require the number of childcare instructors or childcare teachers per number of kids. I think those things are a little intense. They were relaxed, I believe, during COVID. I think they can still be relaxed. I also think there has to be some sort of serious conversation about some sort of subsidies or tax breaks. But I think this goes across, this might have to be targeted for a wide range of people outside of low income people. Again, to take nothing away from what they need. But again, this is not just a low income problem. I don't even know if it's a middle class problem. I think this is a problem that is everywhere. much like worker shortage. And look, this is something where we talk to manufacturers, we talk to small business owners, we talk to, in Milwaukee, in Waupun, in Fond du Lac, in La Crosse. I mean, every business almost seems like has a worker shortage problem. That's not something that, look, past the talking points, this is really not even a critique on anybody. Like, that's just not really going to be solved easily overnight.
Is that something we can even solve as a statewide thing, as far because it's something that's every state is dealing with to a certain extent?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be very hard. I mean, I think there's a number of issues that you have a lot of people who left the workforce and they're not coming back. I truly believe that we need to like overhaul the tax system. This is where I start to think about like, well, what would happen if we got rid of the income tax and we had like an abundance of people that would come into the state, or businesses would be able to pay a tremendous amount of more money. Like, how do we incentivize people to get out of off the sidelines and into the workforce? And that also implies for teaching too. Look, big news last week with all the funding, $1 billion to public schools, 280 million to private schools and charter schools. But look, we still have a teacher shortage, and that is going to be a problem that really impacts schools in every sector all across the state. And I'm not 100% sure if that funding agreement is going to solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, you just said a lot, and there's so much I want to respond to, but we only have 30 seconds left, and I have to let you go. But you're going to be back next month.
Next month,
we'll have more to talk about. CJ Szafier is the CEO of the Institute for Reforming Government. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All
Happy
right.
Friday.
Happy Friday. I'll see you next month. All right. We'll be back with Matt Mueller for our monthly pop culture update. When we come back, this is As Goes Wisconsin.
And on the app, The Maggie Dawn Show.
Wisconsin's manner of funding local government is nearly singular in the country. That cheese stands alone, if you will. It hasn't been working in Milwaukee. It hasn't been working in Rhinelander. It hasn't been working in La Crosse, Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. I don't care what you pick. It ain't working.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime. Download the Civic Media app from the Apple or Google Play Store.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry, and we are joined by Matt Mueller of On Milwaukee. He is the culture editor over at On Milwaukee, where he writes about movies, television, sports, music, and beyond. And he joins us once a month to give us a little bit of a pop culture update of what we should see, what we should check out, maybe what we should not check out. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm a little tired. Summerfested, did my first Summerfest review of the year last night at Griffin, which was the EDM act at the Miller Lite Oasis. And I walked a lot, and I have reached the age where that is a dangerous thing to do. So now
You're
I
playing
hope,
with fire that you might be a little sore the next day.
yeah,
from walking.
the knees are not what they used to be, and I have been walking like the Terminator this whole day so far. The old Terminator, not the new cool sleek ones. But it was a great show. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a great show for EDM fans and also for people who don't like EDM, honestly, because he busted out a guitar at various points and actually played some real music. He busted out the drum machine and actually played alongside live with one of the songs. So there's a little bit more. It didn't feel quite like the cliche, like takes out laptop, presses play, pumps
And then
fist
fist
for the next 2 hours. So I thought that was really exciting. And now I'm excited tonight to see, I'm going to be at Sophie Tucker. That will be my next review from Milwaukee.com, and then Noah Khan on Saturday. So you can stay tuned for all those coming up, plus all the reviews everyone else at On Milwaukee.
I know. So how do you pick which acts you're going to review for On Milwaukee?
So I'm the youngest person on staff. So I get.
Are you really?
I am. We actually just hired Courtney Bondar, who's our great multimedia journalist. But I am the youngest long-term tenured employee, I guess. And so I kind of get free range for all the cool hip stuff, like Molly and Bobby and Lori. They get their music, and if it's in the top 40, I kind of get first dibs at it in a lot of cases. But no, it really is. We're really quite lucky in that we kind of just pick the bands we want to see and go and see them and review them. So I'll be there 8 of the 9 days.
Nice.
I'm reviewing Smash Mouth, which is exciting because Smash Mouth is the band that made me not like concerts for a long time. So I loved All Star as a proper millennial growing up. I loved the song All Star from
The
Shrek.
years start coming and they don't stop coming. That one.
The rules and hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. But anyways, and I love them. I had their album. I listened to All Star every day. And then they were performing at the All Star game, the MLB All Star game that year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. And I turned it on and I see them performing and I'm like, wow, they're terrible. They are awful live. And I was like, if a great band like Smash Mouth can't perform live, then who can? What's the point of seeing a worse version? So for like 10 years of my life, I didn't go to any concerts because of Smash Mouth.
Wow.
Things have changed. Hopefully history doesn't repeat itself with
They've gotten better.
the concert at Summerfest this year. So I
That
believe
is-
they don't even have the old lead singer anymore. I believe it's a new lead singer now.
My Smash Mouth trivia is very, very stale, so I can't answer that for you. But I guess as far as kind of the general vibe of Summerfest, we had Matt Wild on earlier this week, and we were just talking about like this is kind of the first pre-pandemic full year of like people kind of looking at what's the turnout going to be, like the 3-weekend format, like kind of as far as Summerfest and its place in Milwaukee's annual calendar. Do you have any thoughts on if this year means something and how,
I mean,
how
I
you
do
see
think
it?
yeah, I do think this is kind of a, obviously 2021 was the September Fest year.
Mhm.
Last year was the first proper Summer Fest back in summer, but with the 3 weekends. Obviously, it's 3 weekends again. I think it's always hard to judge each year against other years because what if Jimmy Buffett isn't able to perform at the AMP? Well, that is a night without an AMP headliner, and that is a massive detriment to that night. How do you compare that then to 2019, 2018? Obviously, with the 3 weekend format, you have, I believe it's 2 less days from the prior Summerfest. So how do you really compare that as well? I think there is you go through cycles with Summerfest where I feel like when you're like a teen, you're upset at Summerfest for not being Lollapalooza and not being Coachella and not being, one of the big fancy cool hip, festivals. And then I feel like you grow up and you appreciate what Summerfest is, which is a massive gathering of all of this music, of all these types of people, everyone in the same place. And that's awesome. And I think we kind of need to stop comparing Summerfest to other festivals and just appreciate Summerfest for kind of the unicorn that it is, that you have Buddy Guy and an EDM concert and, Eric Church all performing in the same place, all bringing people to the lakefront. I think that's great.
Good. I like that kind of optimist attitude as far as this is a great, unique thing instead of sometimes the attitude of Summerfest and it's not what it used to be.
Yeah, and it's this idea of like, oh, they're trying to be everything for all people, and you can't please everyone, and that's true. But then the more I feel like I grow up, the more I appreciate that they are trying to be something for everyone. It's really hard, and I think they generally pull it off pretty much every year. And we're only 1 day in so far, but so far so good for me.
Good. That's great to hear. Well, let's talk about some summer movies because the summer blockbusters are upon us. Which ones have you seen so far? Which ones are you looking forward to seeing? Which ones should people maybe skip?
Yeah, so I'm very intrigued by No Hard Feelings, which is the new Jennifer Lawrence R-rated comedy coming out this weekend.
Yes, I've seen a lot of ads for that.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like a test balloon because comedies have had a really hard time in theaters. This is even pre-pandemic. It's been a really hard time to get people to come back out to the theaters for comedies. People don't think of it as big screen worthy entertainment, which is very sad because I think comedy is best enjoyed in a crowd of people, not alone on my couch. So I think people are really keeping an eye on this Jennifer Lawrence comedy really intensely because if this does well, maybe there's hope for the studio comedy. Maybe there's hope for, the big screen and laughs back on the big screen. It looks like it had a really good Thursday night in terms of preview screenings. It might open on par with like a Cocaine Bear, which was a hit and made money. So that's good. So it seems like a positive step. I haven't seen it yet. For all I know, it's hot trash. But it would be nice if even hot trash could do well at the box office for comedies these days. It feels a little bit like can we get a win for the comedy? Back in theaters.
Because speaking of which, The Blackening at least has very good reviews. Have you seen The Blackening yet?
I have not yet. I've been hoping to with all the Summerfest prep. wasn't able to get over to that one, but yeah, really good reviews. And
I don't know what
solid opening as well.
Oh, that's great to hear.
For a horror comedy, horror comedies don't tend to do very well. People like horror movies, people like comedies. You mix the two together, people get confused. But it did pretty well for its budget. I think it only cost like $5-7 million to make, plus marketing, so double that. And it's already made $7 million at the box office, and the word of mouth is good. The reviews are good. So I think they're going to have a small hit on their hands. And I think Hollywood needs to pay attention to those small hits. The Flash has bombed. Elemental has bombed. Transformers probably going to bomb. Fast 16. All these movies have bombed, and all these movies cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. They're all trying to hit grand slams all the time. What about hitting a single? What about just getting on base? That's what Hollywood needs to look at now because People don't have the time, the money, the brain power to see every single blockbuster. So a Flash is going to fall through the cracks if people hear that it's not very good. A Transformers will fall through the cracks. Dungeons and Dragons, really fun movie. People didn't have the time for it, and it's a weird fantasy movie, so fell through the cracks. Those movies are going to lose their studio's money, whereas something like The Blackening, small movie made for $5 million, only makes maybe $20 million. They're making money back.
That's in the black.
Yeah, on investment. Maybe we should look back at that kind of stuff. That's why horror does so well, and horror keeps getting made because they're generally cheap and they make a lot of money. And even if they don't make a lot of money, they at least make a little money because they were so cheap to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I did hear at a different program, I heard you on the radio pretty much saying, don't waste your time on Transformers.
I really had a bad time with it. And I am somebody who enjoyed the Michael Bay Transformers. Well, some of the Michael Bay Transformers movies. But you watch, I have a newfound appreciation for those dumb, brain-dead movies because Michael Bay at least makes a big movie. That dude has a visual panache. He has a style. You know, they're dumber than rocks, but at least they're beautiful rocks, you know? Whereas you watch Transformers, it's just as dumb. It's just as kind of mind-numbing in a way, but there's no style to it. There's no cinematic quality to it. You watch that movie, it feels cheap and small. You get to the third act and you have a terrible action sequence in this like brown, gray, Peru digital world that just looks like garbage. And, you know, The Flash has the same problem, honestly, that the third act turns into an awful trash garbage CGI desert fight. And it just leaves you coming out of the theater with a kind of taste in your mouth of like, that was a waste. That was a bad time. I feel soulless now.
That's a bummer.
It is
well,
a bummer. It is
are
a
you
bummer.
looking? Are you a Wes Anderson fan?
I am a Wes Anderson fan. I'm
a
convert to Wes Anderson. It took me a while to get there, but I actually really liked Grand Budapest Hotel, and I really liked The French Dispatch. It's me. Hi, I'm the weirdo who really liked The French Dispatch.
I don't think you're alone with that. But are you looking forward to Asteroid City?
Very much so, and that's actually out right now in Milwaukee, wide actually. And I do want to let people know about another indie movie they should check out. It's only showing at the Downer right now. It's called Past Lives.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, small indie movie from A24 about a woman who runs into an old colleague, an old crush. Kind of seems like it kind of has Before Sunset vibes, but critically loved this year. One of the best reviewed movies of the year. The critics who've seen it love it. I'm very excited to check that out. And honestly, I don't know how much longer it's going to be in town. You've got Indiana Jones coming out soon. You've got a lot of stuff coming out soon. So these summer seasons, when an indie movie is in theaters, see it while you can, because it might not be around for much longer.
And also support small indie theaters like
also support indie theaters.
Downer and
support
Oriental.
Indie film. I mean, there's just not, the indie theaters have not recovered as well from the pandemic as your major, you know,
AMC's and Marcus.
Because it's easy to get people to show up to Spider-Man and Avatar. It takes a little bit more work to be like, hey, this Swedish romantic drama, really worth your time. Definitely this documentary about, you know, volcanologists. Trust us, it's good. It just takes a little bit more effort. So, and the indie film scene has also, they're catching up too after pandemic. So hopefully that starts building back up and we get more indie movies back on those screens. But while they're there, see them, please.
Absolutely. Well, in a minute, can you tell us what's going on with Turner Classic Movies?
Yeah, Warner Brothers is trying to kill it.
Boo.
In one of their continuing goals of being the worst studio in Hollywood, Warner Brothers fired a bunch of people, let go a bunch of people from Turner Classic Movies, critical members of that channel. And it got so bad that Martin Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Steven Spielberg jumped on a call with the head of Warner Brothers. And it seems like it was like a talking to. It seems like it was like, hi, we are the three most famous filmmakers working right now. What are you doing to Turner Classic Movies? Cut it out.
Stop it.
hopefully he listens to them. Rich dudes don't tend to do really well at being told not to do things, as we learned this past week in very horrible manner. So hopefully they keep Turner Classic Movies alive, because it's a great outlet for older films, and the streaming universe doesn't care about movies made after 1980. So we need somebody out there caring about these movies, preserving the history of cinema, of this art form.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Matt Miller, it is always so fun to have you here. We'll see you in July for another pop culture update. Have a great weekend. Have fun at Summerfest. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We got one more break, and we'll be back after that. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
One 2615 West North Avenue in Brookfield, or online at soccerworldofbrookfield.net.
Fireworks, parades, red, white, and blue. Civic Media loves 4th of July, and we hope you do too. Would your local business benefit from reaching thousands of radio listeners in the metro Milwaukee area? Show your American pride by sponsoring a radio promo celebrating Independence Day, listing city firework displays, and honoring military veterans. If you're a key decision maker for your company and would like to learn more, email your name and number to Lindsay at info@civicmedia.us. That's info@civicmedia.us. Happy Independence Day.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A blend of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 86. Winds out of the northeast, 8 to 15 miles an hour. Lows level off around 60 tonight, mainly clear. High temperatures reach up to 89 tomorrow. Chance for scattered storms Sunday and Monday. Upper 70s Sunday, low 70s by Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 79 degrees.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. But you're glad to ride, so join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. When the clock strikes 2.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. Show just flew by today. Jane Matnair had the day off, but she will be back on Monday. Calvin, how did you like manning the board today for As Goes Wisconsin?
I had a blast. It was a great show.
Yeah, I thought so too. You got any? Are you going to Summerfest this weekend?
I am not.
Are you a Summerfest
I'm
person?
not. I've been once. Not a big.
You've only been to
Summerfest guy.
Summerfest
Yeah.
once in your
Yeah,
life.
Only been there one time.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Wisconsin.
Which city did you grow up in?
I grew up in Eagle, Waukesha County.
So yeah. So our Michael who called earlier.
Yep.
So you grew up next to Old World, Wisconsin.
Yep.
How did you go to there more than you went to Summerfest?
Oh, I think I've been there once too.
Just not a music fan, or it's just that scene is not for you?
I guess it's more the scene.
All right.
I definitely love music. It's hard. I don't believe anyone who says they don't like music.
I think that's true. I would say I'm someone who likes music, but I don't like. If you ask me who play, like, I don't know a lot about music. Like being able to hear a song, and be like, that's from that album and that artist, and knowing like who the bands are and like the genres and stuff like that. Like I don't know that. I just know if I like a song or not. It's kind of how I feel about wine.
Oh yeah,
Like,
no,
was it
I
good
feel
or not?
I feel
I
the
don't
same
know.
way.
I don't know
Yeah,
anything actually about what makes it good. I just know if I like it or not.
for sure.
Right?
I agree.
All right. Well, thank you for stepping in today.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
But yeah, so as we wrap up the day, I wanted to give a little shout out to the nappers out there, the people who take, who find time in their busy days to take a nap. And because it turns out that there may be a casual link between habitual napping and larger total brain volume. So, my husband will be very happy to hear this, but regular napping makes your brain larger, apparently. And I don't know how this is not a bigger headline because this feels like a lot of people would like to have this information. But it's a conclusion that was reached by a new study that compared people age 40 to 69 who were genetically predisposed to take naps versus people who weren't. And the researchers found that the nappers, through their naps, had bigger brains that were equivalent to people 2.6 to 6.5 years younger. So I guess the study does have limitations, such as finding that napping does not affect 3 other brain measures, but it does apparently preserve brain volume. So take that for what it's worth as far as justifying any naps that you were planning on taking during the week or during the weekend. You've earned it, and also it's good for your brain. But the other, I guess Pat talked about this a little bit in his weirdest story. But in fact, I know yesterday we talked a little bit about the submersible. They did have more of a conclusion yesterday. And I have to say, as far as I think that is a relief to know that it was just something that was an implosion, that it was over before they even knew what was happening versus the alternate scenario they were putting out there as far as being stuck in something and counting down the hours until you just suffocated. But man, what a weird story that just captivated all of us. But and it's interesting, and this is probably a topic for something else, but we talked about it yesterday as far as comparing this to the other extreme adventures that the very wealthy do. And I saw an interesting take on this as far as likely this story will not be a warning to other people as far as, hey, maybe don't do this. Because they compared to, and this was mentioned yesterday, I think Jack called in and talked about this, but the book Into Thin Air, which was based on the story of the people who did not make it when they tried to climb Mount Everest. And yet now we're at the point where people, young people, old people, because of the assistance they can pay for and kind of, if it's expensive, it by paying a certain price, it makes things more accessible for anyone to be able to do so long as you have money, that the danger of it becomes less and less. And so the danger does not become a mitigating factor. So it's in a lot of, he's basically making the argument that this will probably not be the last time we see someone who tries to go down into one kind of a minivan that can go 3 miles below the water and risk instant implosion and your body disintegrating in order to have the thrill of seeing the Titanic. And that if anything, this potentially, especially with this much media attention, could only create more appeal and awareness that this is even an option. And I can't wait to see how this translates to space travel and the people who are like, that seems awesome. I don't care how dangerous it is. We'll just continue to pay people who can make it less dangerous for us. So I thought that was an interesting take on what was probably one of the biggest stories of the week. But that'll do it for us this week. This has been a really fun week of shows, and looking forward to next week as we round out the end of June already, which is wild how quickly time is going. But to everyone who called in this week, everyone who texted in this week, Thank you for being part of the show. As always, if you missed any part of today's show, you can always listen to it as a podcast, which you can find on asgoeswisconsin.com/listen or Apple or Spotify or wherever you find podcasts. Also, make sure that you download the Civic Media fancy new app. Whether you're on Android or Apple, in your app store, you can download Civic Media and take us wherever you go. You can get all of our stations there. You can flip between the stations to find the best show that you're on. It's on at that point. You can text us and call us and check out our website from the app. Certainly check it out. It's really cool. And with that, happy Friday. Stick around for our noon newscast. This has been As Goes Wisconsin. We'll see you on Monday.
Your eyes are saying, talk to me. But my attitude is